Rich, let me ask you a question. Would you take a coffee enema?
Well, I like a strong flat white.
I like a long black. Not sure. We are not running with
We
that.
got to run with that. We have to keep that in. That is so good. That is great. Okay, what is a coffee enema?
Well, there is such a thing. I mean, it is as it says. It's an enema with coffee. And it's actually, Rich, the basis of one of the most contested diets of the 20th century, one that reportedly cures cancer. And according to the daughter of its designer, it's been actively suppressed by the medical establishment.
Oh, this is right up my alley, Dr. Nick. So we're going to have a look at the man behind the menu, Dr. Max Gerson, namesake of the Gerson diet, who he was, what he believed, and whether there is a kernel of truth to all his cure claims.
And of course, there's no shortage of opinions when it comes to health. Some claims get louder, stories get shared, and the facts can get blurred.
But our friends at Blackmore's have got over 90 years studying health, guided by evidence, science, and real expertise.
They focus on what's proven, what's understood, and what genuinely helps people live better.
Blackmore's, more health,
more life.
We do think it's a good thing. And speaking of that, you know what I just polished off before this episode?
Oh, let me guess. A halloumi wrap.
And not a half, the whole. I don't do things by halves, Dr. Nick.
You are not an easily satiated man. As you know, the halloumi wrap, for those of you who listened to season 1, is the wrap of choice for Cabalistas. And if you're past Mavis the grocer in Abbotsford, who are not sponsoring us, by the way, but we wanted to give the fellas there a big shout out. They do a great halloumi wrap. Rich, back in season 1, we tested some of the claims that found their way to Joe Rogan via that great Australian Mel Gibson about cures for cancer and their apparent suppression by the pharmaceutical industry. During that episode, you spoke eloquently about your own cancer journey. Let's open that up again for our listeners. On both occasions when you received treatment for follicular lymphoma, what did you do with your diet and nutrition?
Good question. The first time, so when I was first diagnosed was 2015. So I was like 37 at the time, and I had a really good diet. You know, I did, and so I didn't look to blame or anything of what I was doing. But did I make changes? Yes, because. And this is when you get a shock diagnosis like that, and I was and am a fit and healthy person. I was still playing, regular cricket and stuff at that stage. I went searching for things that other people who'd had the same condition or similar conditions, what changes did they make? And a couple of common things kept coming up, maximizing your fruit intake and lots of coloured food. Limiting sugar. I couldn't come at ruling out like a Friday night beer because otherwise, like, why are you living?
Why live?
We bought like a NutriBullet thing, and so I was like making juices and smoothies and that for a while.
You know what's really fascinating at what you've just described, and is that you were going modified or moderated Gerson.
Yeah, without knowing it.
Without actually knowing it. So the Gerson diet is based on organic fruit and vegetables. It's also, you didn't go as far as the coffee enema, but
not yet.
It's based on a marked reduction in amino acids. So, you would get rid of the meat, but you'd have to get rid of the fish as well. You wouldn't be able to have that.
Yeah, so I'm pescatarian.
And I think the negative effects of processed sugar are now becoming so widely accepted in healthcare. So as we go through, we want our listeners to think about the kernel of truth. And, as the doctor in the house, there is no way that I'm advocating for the Gerson diet. And I think you'll see at the end why. But the kernel of truth and what may and may not be good for you when you have something very seriously affecting your life, well, there's some starting points there that you latched onto pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I with the cancer journey was fortunate enough, I had a full remission and felt great and everything returned to normal. I still kept my diet largely the same. I probably got less strict. And then during COVID, when we all went a bit crazy, right? Especially in that first lockdown home, I was that bored. I did an experiment to see how many days in a row I could eat the same thing for lunch.
Ooh, and what did you eat? And wasn't halloumi wrap, I reckon.
It was not halloumi wrap. It was 2 toasted sandwiches of cheese, avocado, tuna, mustard, and tomato. And I did that for 76 days in a row.
What do you think it did?
I just felt a bit stodgy by the end of it. But you know what? The more I did it, the more I looked forward to it. I eat like a neglected golden retriever.
What, like?
Yes, and that's part of my problem.
Yeah.
I think that's where all my problems started, was with my greed. Not really, but and anyway, 2021, we're in COVID times. I had a recurrence or a relapse. Did I change my diet then? Don't think so. I might have again sort of shrunk back a little bit to what I did in 2015. But I'm a big believer in kind of moderation and in everything. That's my big learning, is you can't deprive yourself of things you enjoy, because that stuffs you up in other ways. You've got to have things you look forward to. Know your limits, but go with the mood as well a little bit there.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is that everything that you've just described there was, part of the 4 pillars of the TV show that I did, Do You Want to Live Forever? You can still catch that on 9 now, 4-part series, pretty interesting. But exercise, sleep, nutrition, and stress. And so if you manage all those things in a sort of balanced and moderate way, it's going to help you whatever condition you have. And you and I have both in the past 5 years suffered from some potentially life-threatening medical conditions. And, we approach it with moderation. The problem is, though, that the Gerson diet is anything but moderate. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Big Max Gerson himself?
Big Max. I thought you were going to it could go 2 ways there. We're going to Macca's? Well, I mean, so Gerson.
Hydration break.
What I can tell you about Gerson, okay, before we get to his regimen, is he was born in 1881 to a German family. Obviously, there's some Jewish heritage there. Studies medicine. Now, the diet and the legend around it is very interesting, and some of it stretches the bounds of what's credible. But we have 13 daily juices of fruit and vegetables. Must be organic. How did they have organic? Was everything organic back in his day? That
is a super question. I'm not sure of the answer to that, but he very much early on, he sort of adopted the absence of chemicals, of adulterants, maybe you could use those words. The 13 juices was supposed to be the cure for cancer, and for all the other conditions, he wanted 10. So there was a difference depending on what
strict
condition.
Veganism was another of his criteria, wasn't it?
Yeah, so he was very much into. He thought that the amino acids, the proteins, were part of the metabolic derangement that he had isolated as the reason for people getting a whole host of conditions. And so he'd sort of arrived at this idea that there was a common pathway for infections, inflammation, aging, cancer, tuberculosis, migraines, you name it. He thought by addressing or by completely removing proteins that he was going to address that problem. There were a few other things.
How did he lift in the gym with
Gerson?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure he was an Arnold Schwarzenegger type character. And I do worry, I mean, just as a general bit of health advice, we don't do specific health advice on the show, but obviously the consequence of strict veganism is you're not getting enough iron in the diet. And it's actually quite difficult to do that. And of course, it's almost shifted. Diametrically opposed to Gerson is the idea that you should be taking creatine every day. This is the interesting thing about dietary fads I take creatine after I go and do a workout, but certainly if you've got chronic conditions, Gerson would say absolutely not. He had a couple of other things as well.
Flaxseed oil.
Yep.
Vitamin supplements and inject buttocks with crude liver extract. How does that work? And which part? Is it your fleshy part, not like up the colon?
No. It is. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean,
It's coffee enema.
in all seriousness,
Yeah.
there's two things going on here in the buttock region. One is actually injecting crude liver extract, and what he actually started was raw calves liver injected. Now, you tell me what you think, just as a layperson, about doing that, injecting that into yourself, and what it might cause.
It's interesting, the use of injections of blood and things like that I know are used in like football injuries, stuff like that. Geelong footballer Max Rook went to Germany and had blood injections, and I think it was cow's blood or something injected into his hamstrings.
Really?
Yeah, back in 2007 or 2009, when one of the years the Cats won the flag. That was interesting to me. I've had my own blood taken out, spun and re-injected into a hamstring tendon for a football injury as well.
Yep.
To try and help that. It worked. It seemed to work. It's very painful. But this calves liver, I don't know what. I just couldn't be bothered doing it. So that would rule me out. I don't like the idea of injecting myself unless necessary. But what could it introduce in terms of you're introducing the tissue of another being into your own tissue?
Yeah, that's right. And I think what you just described there with the Geelong footballer and your own experience are things that are they're controlled, they're sterile, which is super important. Like if you're injecting raw calves liver, then that could be full of gastrointestinal pathogens, gut bacteria. We're talking E. coli. People might have heard of salmonella, campylobacter. You can give yourself sepsis. And why? I suppose we need to get to the why. Why do you do it? Well, liver's jam-packed full of vitamin B, folate, iron, that sort of thing. So that's the idea, that you're correcting this specific metabolic imbalance with those high doses of B vitamins. But really, extraordinarily dangerous. And I think if people are listening who, are into the peptides or that sort of thing, the problem is that if you inject something into yourself, then you are bypassing the usual human ways of actually managing those pathogens. Now, full disclosure, I've actually eaten raw liver. It wasn't raw calves liver, it was raw camel's liver.
Oh.
Yeah, right? And so I did it in Sudan. So you do these things when you're in another culture because, it's kind of like the done thing. And I was there for Doctors Without Borders, and we were in the market, and one of the local staff said, "Oh, come, we'll go and have some lunch." And we sit down. I'm sort of sitting there going, kind of looking, what am I doing? Like, this is I actually quite like liver. I like offal, but this was uncooked. It had some lime juice, so the acid had cooked it a little bit, so it had gone a bit grey. And I ate this stuff. At least my gut had the opportunity to do what it should do. So the stomach acid probably killed most of the things in there. Or to be fair, my guts have never been the same. And I'm about to have a colonoscopy, so maybe the effects were bad. But anyway, you're sort of ingesting something. You've got a fighting chance of getting rid of the bacteria. As soon as you inject it, then you're bypassing those immune,
so it's a dangerous, it's a risky thing.
It's risky
to be doing.
So risky that the FDA banned it because of the Gerson diet in the late 80s, 1989. So that's when the Gerson movement, headed by Max Gerson's daughter, Charlotte, had to move to injecting crude liver extract because it was actually manufactured in a sterile way. So Not that I recommend that either.
So Charlotte Gerson, his daughter, you just mentioned there, seems to be kind of like the creator of the legend.
Yeah.
What do you know about her relationship with her dad?
You try and look for something credible on Max Gerson, and it's really, really difficult. I mean, you're getting down into the 4th, 5th, 10th, 20th page in Google trying to find stuff. And
that's bizarre.
What you find is just the same message repeated by different people saying the same thing, and you can't sort of trace it back to any sort of credible source. So I think there's a myth and a legend that was propagated probably by his daughter, who set up his sort of business. And we've gone a long way into this without actually stating what made this guy famous. He actually published a book called 50 Cases of Cancer That Were Cured by the Gerson Diet. And that's That's kind of what propagated this.
When was that published, roughly?
1959, I think. Or he might have
Okay.
died in 59. It was around about then.
So 50 cases. So I'd assume they are all sorts of different types of cancer.
Yeah.
So this is a catch-all.
Yeah. People would come to him with this problem, and he had established this as a sort of treatment for himself, which was really interesting.
Yeah, what was his problem? Did he have a cancer or did he have another issue?
He grew up with migraine.
Okay.
So he had these intractable, intolerable pain. Remember we spoke about Kurt Cobain's journey with his abdominal
his guts,
pain?
Yeah.
But Gerson, in his defense, this guy's got an inquiring mind. And the one thing that I did find on the Google search was a paper that he'd actually written where he's actually trying to get into the science. Now, I would call it more pseudoscience, but he's making a credible attempt to sort of say, okay, there is a common pathway for a series of diseases. I think it's this, and I think the consequence is you got to have this diet. Whether you believe that or not, that's what he's trying to sort out. Anyway, he starts off with this with his migraine, his own migraines. This is where I don't quite understand it. He cured his migraines through diet. But does he really go from saying, like you did, okay, I've got lymphoma, I need to change my diet a little bit, to I'm going to cure my own migraine with 10 organic juices, some coffee enemas, some raw calves liver. It doesn't make sense. The first part of this story where I'm searching for the kernel of truth actually makes no sense.
Well, because it's not proportional and it's not, I don't think it's achievable in any long-term.
No.
Again, like I'm all there for, I'm all there for alternate theories and keeping an open mind on things. There's nothing wrong with trying these things and adapting a bit of trial and error and tinkering around with your things to find what works for you. But this seems like way beyond any of that. This is, that's a full-time job.
Yeah. And I wonder.
And you need money.
Yes, and resource, and I think he was a physician. He had money and resources. I wonder if what happened was, in fact, that he started doing a couple of things which worked for his migraines, and then over the 1920s and 30s, he sort of bolted on these ever increasingly difficult things to achieve, and then it sort of morphs into the ultra wellness alternative naturopathic movement that is the Gerson diet now, that we'll get onto some of the people that have been involved with that. Before we get there are a few steps. He starts to think that he can cure other conditions with the Gerson diet.
So the other conditions, we know obviously publishes a book claiming to cure cancer.
Yeah.
What are the other things?
So cancer is actually the last one in the sequence. Okay. It starts with his migraines and it moves through to a condition people will be aware of, tuberculosis.
Oh, yeah.
But not lung tuberculosis. It was tuberculosis affecting the skin.
I'd never heard of that.
Now, tuberculosis, it's a bacterial illness. We call it the great mimic. It's a bit like syphilis. We don't see too much syphilis anymore. But both those bacteria can affect any part of the body, including the skin.
Okay.
So for cutaneous tuberculosis or skin tuberculosis, Gerson claimed that his diet would reverse it. So he's gone from migraine to tuberculosis. And then there's even a claim in there that he cured the wife of the famous physician, polymath and humanitarian, Nobel Peace Prize winner, Albert Schweitzer, who was apparently mates with him because of his ability to cure her.
What was her problem?
So she had tuberculosis. Now, it was unclear whether she had skin tuberculosis or lung tuberculosis. Okay. Seems to, the myth, the legend of Gerson was that he was friends with this very credible guy because of that intervention with the diet, and that Schweitzer actually believed in the Gerson therapy.
How does his theory and what he puts into practice, what does it do? Is it something to do with metabolism or the metabolics?
Yeah, it's based on an imbalance between sodium and potassium. That's what he reckons.
And how does that apply to cancer?
I cannot tell you. So I don't think there's a credible, a plausible health pathway for what he is advancing. But what he's suggesting is that most people would say that the common pathway for cancer is recurrent hits to your DNA, which then what we call dysregulate cells. Instead of dying when they should, they start to not die, and then they start to multiply, and then you have a single clone that gets worse and worse, and bigger. So he was sort of saying, okay, well, that may well be the case. I don't think he engaged in that sort of stepwise theorizing. He thought that the way to cure it was to fix your potassium, to increase your potassium and decrease your sodium. And when you look at all the fruits and veggies that he's got in his diet, it's all about very, very high potassium content stuff.
Okay. And so no salt.
No sodium, because potassium's a salt.
So potassium is salt. I thought I was reading his diet and it said you had to cut out, or is it a certain type of salt?
Yeah, it's sodium.
So I can't have salt on my chips.
You can't have salt on your chips because that's sodium chloride. But you do want the salts from fruit and veg, which is potassium.
Yeah.
And, the coffee enema is designed to sort of detoxify, get rid of sodium out the back passage, give you diarrhea and all this sort of nasty stuff. This is the basis. So this is the basis for it. Just as an aside though, Rich, and this is again where the legend just doesn't sort of stack up. I couldn't find anything where Schweitzer himself had written anything about Gerson.
That's telling.
This was all Gerson acolytes, including the daughter, Charlotte Gerson, saying that, Schweitzer was mates with Dad.
Do you know what should be studied more than the diet then is their sales campaigning techniques.
100%.
I like that. Yeah. I think that's a thing. We might use that for the Cabal.
We should use that for the Cabal.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess what he's applying here, and this would be something you would have come across in medicine all the time, and is we hear of anecdotal or homespun kind of methods of treating things that can get, a wave of support or, word of mouth. I noticed in the research notes you mentioned something of another example where orthopedic surgeons believe that doing something after surgery in their field helps, but there's probably no clinical studies that prove that.
Absolutely. I guess what we're saying here is that what Gerson's done is not unusual in modern medicine. He's formed an a priori belief. He's applied it to a certain group of people. He's cherry-picked the ones where he thinks that it's worked, published them as a case series of 50, and he hasn't actually shown us the ones that don't work. So in the orthopedic situation, many, many orthopedic surgeons will put antibiotic impregnated bone cement or beads next to joint replacement in the theory that antibiotics next to a joint replacement are going to prevent infection. But when you actually look at the trials, all you see is Gerson-like case series with no examples of where that hasn't worked or where you're actually doing proper science, which is having an intervention group and a control group alongside it. So the control group is the group that doesn't get the therapy, has the same problem, doesn't get the therapy, and you see what happens. So that's kind of where Gerson's at in the 1950s, and that's where his movement starts to gather pace.
And so, we get to his death is in 1959, and we heard about his daughter Charlotte earlier, and she's like the standard bearer for Dad, and it sounds like she's the business brain, right? And so she sets up multiple Gerson clinics, and I guess with what people go pay money and get this sort of treatment for their cancer or whatever ailment that Gerson and Charlotte claim that this is, efficacious for.
And it's not cheap. I mean, if the clinic in Baja is in Mexico, reported to cost $5,000 a week.
It's no luxury escapes either.
No, it's not. I mean, you're sitting there. So,
I'd rather my cocktail and a massage than a coffee enema and calf liver injections and juicing that much. Who wants to drink that much juice?
Well, I think you came across a really interesting article that was written in the early 2000s about someone with a different condition, because Gerson has put this forward, Charlotte Gerson, put her dad's stuff forward as a cure-all for more than just cancer. And none of this is sort of helped. I mean, I guess the search for truth or moderation or some balance here, it's not helped by some pretty important figures actually backing in the Gerson diet at various points in history.
One of the world's most recognizable and famous people, our own King Charles.
When he was Prince, in 2004, he actually stood up at a conference of 200 eminent doctors and advanced the idea that one of his inner circle had been cured from cancer by the Gerson diet and said that it warranted further investigation.
That's pretty astounding. That's a great bit of validation there from a incredibly influential and recognizable person. But if he's telling the truth about that it did that for his friend and that person, then I guess there's no problem in saying that it warrants further study. Maybe why not? We have a nationally funded study with all the controls in there to trial it. Has that happened?
Well, funnily enough, there was a nationally funded study in the US. It didn't have a positive result, but not of the Gerson therapy itself. It was for nutritional therapy in cancer.
So a similar, like a similar basis to the Gerson.
I just don't think as rigorous. I mean, there's just nothing moderate about the Gerson diet. You know what I mean? It's so difficult to adhere to.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with the question just of adherence. Okay, how long does someone have to go through this strict daily routine before it achieves a result?
Well, remembering you don't have any time to do anything else. If you're having 13 organic juices that you have to prepare, because apparently you can't store them. You can't sort of prepare in bulk and then have them over the next week.
It sounds just like a diet for selfish you-know-whats. To me, if you've got a family and whatever, you can't. You would be so self-possessed and absorbed. And if you've got cancer, you want to spend time with your family and actually create memories. If your kids want to go, I can't help you, I can't talk to you because I've got to make my 7th juice for the day.
And that's exactly how it goes. The minimum duration is 21 days.
And that's when you might start to see.
That's when you might start to see some sort of effect, according to the proponents of Gerson. But of course, one of the advantages of these, like in conspiracy, we talk about things not being falsifiable. So if you didn't get a result after 21 days, it's either because you didn't do it properly or, better still, you didn't go long enough, particularly if you're paying $5,000 a week to be at a clinic that does it for you. So there have been some suggestions that you need to go out for a year or 2 years on this sort of diet, which is sort of utterly implausible that you could actually get to that sort of level.
Well, I don't even think someone with the resources of even the king himself could sustain that. It is just impractical. But
I do want to ask you though, Rich, just the pushback that the king got. So the medical,
what happened?
And this is where the conspiracy against Gerson comes in, because there was obviously a massive pushback. There were letters to the British Medical Journal, and it was in the Guardian, and people were pillorying really the prince at the time, Prince Charles. And we're not massive Charles fans because of our Princess Di episode, but he was just making a point. And then the reaction. Do you think that is the right way to react to this sort of thing? And what do you think it's likely to do?
All these things do. We see it in Australian society at the moment is it creates pushback from the other way. It opens a gap for people to be labelled as like conspiracy theorists or nut jobs. And then these people have vested interest because, they've got this big pharma, and the medical establishment are challenged by this. So there's fear and they end up not talking to each other and everyone gets tribalised.
And then you end up with people actually following it. And that's the problem.
Well, because they would want you, that's that conspiratorial thinking.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that because that's, they want me to do this, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. And then, some rather famous cases. I mean, I think the most famous fraud case was Bell Gibson.
As in Australia, well, around the world now, thanks to the Netflix show. Yeah, I mean.
And for those of you who don't know, someone who actually faked their own brain cancer.
And then sort of set up a social media / business empire.
Yep.
Briefly.
And a lot of it was around nutrition.
Yes, yeah, around nutrition. I mean, look, there is a lot of that. So I remember going back to your question at the start when I got my diagnosis and stuff like that, and I found those diets. Now that I think about it, I mean, they weren't as extreme as Gerson, but there were a lot of similarities in the type of food groups.
Where did you find them?
Just online, like no Lymphoma Australia or Blood Cancer Australia or whatever. It wasn't there. Like there's some
Yeah.
general things around diet, but nothing prescriptive.
A lot of this stuff is discussed in the dark parts of, well, not even dark. It's actually, you don't have to go too far
No,
into Facebook.
it wasn't hard to find.
You don't, well, to find Gerson or other dietary methods that eschew any
But you know
sort of
what?
chemo.
They all wanted money
Yeah, right. Well, that's
to follow it. I'm going to give you a bit of my secret.
Yeah.
Hey, I got diagnosed with this thing 28 years ago, and look at me, and it's some dude with grey hair flexing his muscles.
Absolutely.
And you too could unlock the secret.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You got to give people money. It's not Medicare funded.
No.
The government's not funding this. That's got to tell you
So just
something.
go to your fruit shop, get some lovely fruit, and just eat normal.
Did you come across a story about someone called Rebecca Ainscough?
You sent me a link to a story about that. That was a piece in The Guardian, and she had like diabolical cancer diagnosis, aggressive sarcoma, which was only known curative therapy is radical. It's amputation.
Yeah.
And she also convinced. She was convinced, wasn't she?
She was convinced. So she didn't want an amputation.
No.
And so she went Gerson.
Yeah.
Now, she also, I think, convinced her mother, who got breast cancer in 2011, to follow Gerson. And her mother died in 2013.
Yeah.
Then eventually, of course, the sarcoma does what sarcomas do, which is grow locally, but they can also metastasize, and ended up taking a life. So she never really got the appropriate early therapy. And, she's not the only example. I mean, Steve Jobs was a famous one. He started with a non-traditional approach to his pancreatic. It's called a pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor. Yeah. You can miss the boat, Rich, as you know. Time's of the essence.
Time's important. Yeah.
So I think there's a few notable examples of where this sort of thing has gone pretty wrong. There was another Rebecca who was also in The Guardian who was trying to treat a different condition.
That's right. She was going blind and there was no cure for her. That's a horrible thing to know and to actually physically feel a sense like sight depleting.
Progressing.
Daily.
Yeah.
Getting worse.
And you know what's going to end.
And you know it. And because we've all shut our eyes.
Yeah.
And we know that's it, know.
And this particular one, retinitis pigmentosa, you lose your peripheral vision first. So you're gradually going into tunnel vision before you go blind.
That would be awful. I can only imagine what you do that to the head. Now, she was writing about her condition and received a letter, I think, from someone saying, hey, you're being self-defeating here.
Try Gerson.
Try Gerson. So she did.
What did you find was most notable about her experience?
I found that she found it utterly exhausting.
Exhausting, depressing.
Yeah. Life depleting in a way.
Made her physically unwell, I think, gave her headaches, all sorts of stuff. And we should relay a part of the story which is a little bit unusual, which is whilst the tunnel vision didn't improve, there were elements of her direct vision which got better. She sort of reported going from 6 on 24 to 6 on 18, which is an improvement. But it's unclear to what extent that was the diet. But of course, people who are followers of Gerson turned around and said, well, same old story. Just didn't do it for long enough. You just didn't do it properly. You just didn't do this, just didn't do that. So
how long did she do it for?
She did it for 21 days and then ate a pizza at the end.
Good reward.
Yeah.
Good reward. And I guess it's with these things is like we look for the kernel of truth, right? Now, maybe undoubtedly there are some good things in what Gerson's saying because he's saying get quality nutrients into your body.
Yep,
it's just a very extreme way of doing that and very hard to maintain.
Yep.
But don't think that you and I are out there saying go and eat junk food because we never talk like that either, do we?
No, that's right. And I mean, can diet reverse pathologies? Well, Australian of the Year, James Mweki, he's actually demonstrated this in diabetics where, if you go on an ultra low carbohydrate diet, you'll reverse some of the diabetic eye changes, diabetic retinopathy. Amazing.
So while we're finishing up on this, I mean, diet is a part of the mix when to function.
Every day.
Every day. But when you hit with something like a cancer diagnosis or things, there are things you can tweak and you may want to tweak. And I think you've got to find what works for you. Common sense would say get rid of, minimize the shitty food. What you put in is what you get out.
Yep.
I say this as a person who's, lived now, 11 years post a diagnosis and treatment, things like that. You got to live in the now too.
Yeah.
So you got to do the things that enjoy you. And I mean, like if you're going to France and you have a picnic and you get a nice bottle of Burgundy and it's a lovely afternoon, are you not going to drink it?
Oh, unbelievable.
You know what I mean?
There is no amount of Gerson that stands in the way of me and a Camembert and Burgundy.
I'd rather, or actually, I was going to say this after you get cut. Max, you can shove that bottle up your ass. Forget about your coffee enemas.
Actually, a Burgundy enema.
Now you're talking.
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking.
Proper medical therapy on the Cabal. Let's finish with a little kernel of truth. Rich?
The global wellness industry.
This is the thing. We don't tell people what to believe on the Cabal, but we do have a fairly consistent theme that where there's money, conspiracy and misinformation and some falsehood can follow.
Absolutely. Well, our friend Nick McKenzie was on, and what did he say about money and investigative journalism?
Oh, follow the money.
Follow the money. Same applies.
So I think if we're going to be fair in where money is, because a lot of people look at Big Pharma, and as you know, Rich, I'm no friend of Big Pharma. I think that all these, and when they get a big with a capital B in front of them, then it's because they've gone too far on something. So there's no doubt that Big Pharma's got some things to answer for, but their turnover annually is about $2 trillion. When we compare that with the global wellness industry, and I'm talking about the whole lot, ice baths, wellness tourism, we're not just talking about Gerson, obviously. We're talking about the whole industry that is non-biomedical, non-pharmacological, $8.7 trillion. So there's actually
insane.
So there's actually more there.
Yep.
And supplements also big business, $500 billion.
They are, but like our friends at Blackmore's, they study, there's science and things like that. They're not just random people on social media saying, hey, do this, do that. That's what troubles me about the wellness industry now is the amount of influencers that come into it without any credibility, but maybe preaching a message that vulnerable eyes and ears want to hear.
And what a great way to finish up there then, Rich, to say that, whereas Rebecca Atkinson with a retinitis pigmentosa gets a letter saying, why don't you try Gerson? We've got hundreds of thousands of people with all sorts of conditions scrolling through, just looking at Facebook, going down rabbit holes and finding this sort of information. So once again, we preach balance, we preach moderation, and searches for the kernel of truth. Do you think there's a way to rate this one? Gerson diet, does it cure cancer? I suppose that's the way to do it.
No. Yeah, no, I'm giving it a 0.
Yeah, it's a 0.
Yeah.
It's a 0. I know there's some people that don't like us when we say that sort of thing, but it's a 0.
Yeah, but by all means, if you want to, try it out. You can't say that because you're a doctor.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say, row your own boat. And with that in mind, I am going for a Guinness. It's Friday afternoon.
And
I've had enough.
I'm going to have to qualify this for the Cabal by saying never take a coffee enema. I think the Gerson diet is actually objectively dangerous, and there are better ways. What an episode that was. That was big.
Yep, that was a coffee enema.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cabalistas. I'm Nick Coatsworth. You're Rich Baker. We've got Ed and James behind the glass at Roland Media in Abbotsford. Thank you to our sponsors, Blackmore's. And if you have any conspiracies to let us know about, conspiracycabal@outlook.com. If you've got some comments about what we've said about diet and cancer, we'd love to hear those. Follow us on Instagram and see you later.